Today, in conversation we're in New York with Sasha and Liz, the creators for the Stone Age. We were here for the grand opening. It was beautiful, all the people, all the staffs, and we were talking about this on your couch, literally, like, just I want to envision this one day, and it was like almost 2.5 years ago, I think. And in my head, I was like, oh, this girl's such a dreamer, and all these rocket ships. But then I was like, when is this gonna happen? I don't even know when it's gonna happen. I believed in you, but I didn't believe that, with all the legalization and all the issues and all the obstacles, it was really going to happen. Right now, in COVID, we're not out of the pandemic yet. So can you tell us a little bit of how you guys met and started this, and how you guys decided on Stone Age?
From the first event that I created in the cannabis space in California nearly 5 years ago, I thought about what would this look like to hit the masses? How can we really drive cannabis education, cannabis wellness into mainstream? And realizing that there wasn't a ton of consumer-facing events on a large scale. And so about 3 years ago, Liz and I had been introduced through mutual contact. We both come from sort of the corporate experiential space. We have our own companies, and we have been building experiences for brands and clients for decades. And Liz is one of the co-founding producers of Rosé Mansion and the Democratic National Convention and a plethora of really dope consumer-facing events. And on a whim, I was like, hey, wouldn't it be cool if we did a Rosé Mansion but for weed? And 2 weeks later, we're sitting in a coffee shop. She's got her iPad. We're mind mapping this whole thing, and and then for several months leading up to what was the start of the pandemic, we were on the precipice of launching a new company that was going to be rooted in plant medicine, wellness, and we had several arms of this company and kind of looking at different models and how we could launch experiences being a facet of that. And then COVID, the conversation around the Stone Age never really died. It was just put on ice. And circa April of this year, I started seeing all of the wild success of everything from Van Gogh to the continuation of Museum of Ice Cream and all of these activities, and the eagerness of people to want to come back out and socialize and build community. And so I called Liz and I was like, all right, let's do our flagship in New York. Let's see what happens. But I feel really strongly, I feel like this is the time. And that week...
Wait, this was April.
This was April.
So just 6 months ago.
Yeah.
When you guys pulled this off.
Oh, wait.
Yeah, not even.
This was literally one giant open space less than 2 months ago. So what we did was truly miraculous. And it was far from an easy road to get here, but coincidentally, when we decided to pull the trigger on launching in New York, was the same week that they announced legalization in New York. So it was really serendipitous timing.
Yeah.
And not to be all woo, but it was like the stars were aligning, and just the energy around it felt really good. And so we started, again, kind of going back to the drawing board of okay, what does this look like? What does this feel like? What is the experience? And, for several months, really working on that. And of course, the universe is a funny creature, because then we start, our individual companies start getting clients reaching back out, and we're like, okay, what do we do? What do we do? And we made a conscious decision about a month and a half into planning that we're putting all our eggs in this basket because we really believe in this. Yeah. The time is now, and here we sit several months later in our dream, and so
But
yeah, it was definitely, while it's been it's really magical to have witnessed everything come together. It certainly hasn't been the seamless process. As founders, not just of the Stone Age, but of our own companies and being entrepreneurs for a long time, there's not enough recognition to what it takes to get to the other side of the tunnel. And I think it makes it really unapproachable for people who have a dream and who feel like the dream is unattainable, because no one celebrates or really acknowledges the hard work and dedication and resilience that's required to push through to get there. Everything, at least for me, and becoming an entrepreneur 8 years ago, and just through social media and through the internet, you're like, everyone feels like an overnight success story. It's like, oh, I had this idea and I started this business and now I'm a millionaire. And it's like, wait, but what happened in between?
All the process was pretty much overlooked. We already actually did a walkthrough on the grand opening day. And I want to say the first and foremost, I've always known that you did luxurious, immersive, experiential events. But to turn those events into a museum, and together you guys really made this happen, all the lighting, all the scent, the touch, just everything. How was like the process of selecting your artists, and like, I'm sure the resumes were crazy at first when you guys were hiring.
Yeah, to lean into that, and I know you're gonna have, we both probably have our stories on this, so I'll be quick with mine. To lean into Sasha's bringing up the universe, I will say, I have been in the event production industry for over 12 years with my own business and previously worked for another company before then. And I always was the vendor, and I always was part of that triple bid process. And by the time you get to actually producing, like, you've gone through so much. And we really leaned into our network, and Sasha's network is vast. And I don't know if it was the right people put in the right place, but when it came to at least the venue was a little bit, and we'll get to that, but the fabricators, the ABL team, I mean, even the artists, we had Anna Seibel, who was our, creative, puppeteer, but she just stepped in, she never asked, I mean, she wasn't even on payroll in the beginning, and she was like, here's your logo, here's the artist, and like we didn't have to do a ton of the digging and the RFPs and the this, because when we met the people and we met their passion and their creativity, we were like, let's put the trust there, because we've been vendors, and a lot of people don't put the trust in their vendors, and it doesn't give you the final product you're looking for, and instead of wasting time going through like RFPs and like drilling the vendors down to the point where they're so uninspired, it's hard to work, we said, we trust you, here's our dream, and here we are.
This is a non-consumption event. I think a lot of people, at first when I said, I'm going to your Cannabis museum, it's called the Stone Age, and they're like, oh, are you going to get high? No, it's not about that. It's full of education, if anything. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, of course. It's interesting, despite us not even being plant touching, not having any plant or consumption, we've had to jump a lot of hurdles, even from finding a venue. We put out a bid on probably over 200 commercial spaces around the city, and we came back with 3 options, because as soon as landlords heard the word cannabis, it was an automatic no. They weren't even interested in anything past that. And same for insurance and payment processors, and I mean, just the amount of red tape that existed for us, from the nature of the content. And we are here to empower the information, empower consumers to make more educated decisions. So that was definitely something that we've grappled with, that we still very much grapple with, I think from an awareness perspective. But the work here is really rooted in not only education, but how are people consuming the education. The idea of making the information not relatable, making it digestible and inspiring, which is why it's so visually stunning, which is why there's the intersection of artistry, of really visual dynamic graphics, the simplicity of the copy, your takeaway manifesto. The idea is that there's a lot to know about cannabis. The information is really vast. Whether it's 1 to maybe a dozen key takeaways from this space, the idea is that they leave here and they feel empowered to know more. It's not about, we want people to leave here and then become cannabis consumers.
Like a know-it-all.
Not even a know-it-all, but just like, it's not about promoting cannabis consumption. It's about helping people understand that this plant exists. It is alternative medicine. It is a wellness tool. It is a catalyst to have many other conversations that impact us.
Information, and then decide for yourself that this is a medicinal plant after all. Just an option.
Yeah. And how powerful is it to be able to leverage cannabis as a tool to talk about sexual wellness, to talk about the opioid epidemic, to talk about mass incarceration. It's not like you have to be high to do all of these things.
Yeah, I don't think people realize, I didn't realize, we were talking with Her Highness, which is one of our many retail partners, and they said, oh, we have these CBD pads that go in your shoes, because as women, when we wear high heels, we get a lot of pain in like the balls of our feet or whatever, and it alleviates that pain. That doesn't take any high, that doesn't take THC, doesn't take anything, it just, you put it in your shoe just like you put an insole in. So there is a lot of knowledge here that can help and impact people, whether they're cannabis consumers or not.
And Sasha mentioned earlier, so is this your first cannabis experience in terms of like event planning and exhibition?
So no, we worked on Females to the Front. That's actually one of the first projects we worked on together.
Okay.
But yeah, Sasha really introduced me to plant medicine in many ways. Obviously, as a human, I've tried cannabis before, but I looked at it as, I want to smoke and get high. I never realized plant medicine before. Needless to say, I didn't realize there was an industry behind it. And it was so interesting putting the dots together, because it's like, I've produced programs for Bacardi, for pharmaceutical brands, for all these companies that have a whole lot of issues behind the ethos of how they are producing their products, much more than the plant medicine, and never thought twice. But here, after I met Sasha, I went back, I'll never forget, we had a company meeting, and I was like, all right, working on this project called Females to the Front, and it's gonna be a cannabis, project, and one of my employees was like, I can't work on that, it's cannabis, that's a drug. And I was like,
Oh my gosh.
we just did an event for, and I'm not gonna say the name, but
Yeah.
for a pharmaceutical brand who had no issue, and now because I'm saying we're gonna do a female-founded retreat in the Palm Springs desert, you don't wanna work
You
with
don't
it.
want to be a
And
part
that's
of
the
it.
stigma we are facing
Right.
from the landlord, not this landlord, it's been amazing, but from landlords,
We love
from
you too,
insurance.
landlord.
Yeah, right, the stigma exists, and it is not just in corporate, it is not just in consumers, it is in our families, it is ingrained, and it's something that we are just creating the platform for, to have the conversation in a market in New York City where we really firmly believe that New York City can be the change and
Right.
can elevate that platform.
And the stigma is global.
Yeah.
The stigma is
Yeah.
global, but it does take one person at a time, one city at a time. So what are some of the plans that you guys have for Stone Age in the future? In what
Take
cities?
over the world.
Yes.
New age, what? Go ahead, Sashi.
We're really looking at the Stone Age as not just a brand, but as a legacy. What we've done here in New York is unprecedented. Dare I say globally.
Yeah.
And in addition to that, really becoming the thought leader in the space, and not even just us being thought leaders, but being a conduit for thought leaders. People coming through the space, people connecting to the brand, to us, and really being able to leverage them through the platform we're creating. So while the experiences are only a part of the brand to really galvanize mass market, the idea is that 150,000 people coming through the door over the next couple of months, and then they have conversations with, let's say, 4 of their friends. All of a sudden, we're looking at what is 100,000? We're starting to propagate, right? We're starting to propagate a new narrative, and with that, being able to take that momentum into an e-commerce platform, into a thought leadership platform, into new markets around the country, and maybe the world. I know we were talking about Asia being a possibility. The information.
After this, I will be banned in Asia.
We'll stand by your side.
Thank you.
But really, I think, like Liz was saying earlier, for us, sky's the limit, and that's the beauty about an industry that's still somewhat untarnished and untouched, is that the ground floor is sort of low to get in, but also the ceiling is immeasurable because no one's done it before. So you don't have to kind of jump. It's not a game of leapfrog. It's a game of create what you want and then continue to evolve that. And ultimately, the dream is being the destination, whether it's inclusive of consumption or not. We very much see the Stone Age being the cultural hub for cannabis, and that lending itself to many other conversations within the wellness space and within the criminal justice and social justice space. There's a lot that we have the ability and the blessing really to change in the world through this thing that started as a little idea on your
famous guac recipe.
Yeah, it's really.
I haven't had this walk, but
You'll come into my house,
blue couch.
But really, I think it's extraordinarily exciting to have limitless possibilities. And as legalization continues to become widespread, the opportunity for us to really help enhance the quality of people's lives through empowered decision making is a gift.
Yes.
And it is how we create change and progress in the world. And for us to be able to walk away from this and share this with our kids and with everyone that this experience impacts, that's what our purpose is. That's what life's about.
And I really want everyone to come and, be able to see this historic moment, because Google blocks all the ads too, and Instagram, Facebook, you name it. There a lot of people are not supporting, cannabis, THC or CBD or even education, even having any info that you
Our
post
Instagram
sometimes.
shop, we were taken down. Our Instagram page was taken down within the first 3 weeks of being up.
See, this is what I'm talking about. But rather than sitting behind a phone and then getting all the information that, information that's allowed versus some real information, come in the Stone Age, and I think they can see so much more for themselves. I have one last question. This is just coming from like a female entrepreneur side. When all odds are against you, and not even just against you, but your beliefs too, and your team, like how do you overcome all that and be like, I'm just gonna do it, I'm just gonna go with it?
It's a really good question. I think as women, there's already such an uphill battle that we have on the business front. We've been talking about this a lot recently. I feel like women in business, the things that we have to overcome. I think as a sole entrepreneur, it's just my husband and I never understood the power of a partner. And meeting someone like Sasha, she must have called me every day or texted me or did exercises to remind me, like, I'm proud of you, we're doing this. And started rewiring the brain for self-promotion. That really helps. So I think the partnership has made a really big difference here. Because I think without having somebody who's constantly there, I'm the one that's always don't see the red tape, we're gonna take over the world. And Sasha really gets into our inner beings, and there's been friction and there's been really great breakthroughs. But I think from the end of this, we're gonna be like a powerhouse. And my wish for everybody is they have somebody like that, because that connection to have somebody who constantly promotes you from them to you, but then gets you to promote yourself. That's a change in itself.
I echo all of that, and I will say that in the times where it's gotten fuck it, this isn't meant to be, and but we're in too deep, so we gotta keep going. But I think my family is definitely my crutch. I'm very blessed to not just be surrounded by a very loving, warm, supportive family who half of doesn't even know what I do for work, but that's another podcast. But really, my community and my partner and everyone has been so tremendously supportive, and even in those moments of absolute I don't know how I'm going to be able to go on, there is so much value in being vulnerable and even saying out loud I need help. And
right? And it's not okay.
It's okay to not be okay, and we as a culture, as a society, need to be open to the fact that we're all going through shit. We all have mental instability, especially coming out of COVID, right? People just are not right anymore, and so there needs to be, as much as we give to other people, and we provide support and all of that to others, there is a major need to turn that inward as well, and acknowledge ourselves, not just for oh, you're doing such a good job, but that notion of it's okay to not be okay. If there was
be really aware.
Self-awareness is really a gift, and it's really hard to get there, but my best friend always says permission to be human. We all experience a spectrum of emotions, and some of us experience those emotions on a much deeper level than others, but there is a need to accept that. It's an acceptance around feeling sadness, around feeling anger, around feeling happiness. When you accept those emotions as part of your overall human experience, it allows you to lean into them and to move through them, as opposed to shaming those feelings and shaming yourself for having those feelings and trying to like, you know, put a Band-Aid on a gushing wound.
Yeah.
Like, the more you feel, you know, and work through that, the better you become as a human.
Can I actually say that?
Yeah.
Well, you brought something up, and I think this is really important. It's something I've been struggling with, you know, in thinking about family. As a person in this industry with kids, the conversation is not always like I look at people's posts and like, should I start posting more? And I'm like, oh, you see my Instagram pages, my pictures, and like, you know, all that kind of stuff. And bringing awareness to the fact, like, I talk about this very openly with my kids, and that's why I'm on 5 and 3.
Oh, nice.
And this is not there's no shame in this. There's no shame in my house talking about cannabis. And, you know, my husband, like, it's amazing. Like, he gave up his work to support us doing this and there for the kids. And the kids are, my kids are going to grow up in a household and then go into the world knowing that this is not a drug. This is a plant medicine. This is a natural piece that is okay to sit in the medicine cabinet right next to the Tylenol. It's okay to use recreationally or medicinally. And I think that from somebody who kind of comes in as like the, you know, having kids in the conversation, like that is something actually that's really important for me and for us, I know, to just normalize it in that way too.
And I think that's so important when kids understand what they are, because then they're not like, oh, you know, what is that? I wanna try it, and it's like still high up in the cabinet, and maybe when they grow up one day they're gonna misuse it. You never know. But if they know it since when they're small, then they're gonna know the right uses for it, what they stand, what they're for, and you know, it's an option for them, but they're not going
And
to
there's a lot of benefits. I mean, there's CBD especially with kids. I mean, they've used it before for skin issues and cleared it up within 2 days, and there's a lot of benefits.
Yes. I felt like I just went to a therapy session. I feel so much better. Because I think for me, it's more about the expectations not met. Like I would have like 10 to-do lists, and obviously I'm not gonna finish it on Monday. Or like a really high number of goals, and if I don't reach that, I'm just like, oh, you know. But I've learned to kind of not lower my standards, but just like what you said, Sasha, to kind of like tune in and lean inward and be like, it's okay if you don't complete those today. You know, try to have a more realistic goal, or say I need help.
It's just really interesting, and I don't know if this is kind of like the evolution of the times because of technology and just what has been expected of us as human beings.
Yes.
But at times, particularly like with emails and text messages and just this constant communication, influx of communication, it makes me feel like sometimes I'm like a robot, you know, and I need to have this certain level of output in order to thrive, and that to me feels very inauthentic, you know, because I'm just outputting just to get it off of my list rather than doing from a place of passion.
Right,
and
right.
If anything coming out of COVID has become crystal clear to me, it's I don't want to like live just to exist. I really want to live from this place, from this place of, you know, I'm doing things that matter and I'm doing things that fill my soul, because our time is not guaranteed on this physical planet. Not, you know, not to get all whatever, but the, you know, the impact of our actions and the impact of how we exist is far more important than and making sure that we get back to all of the emails and making sure that, you know, all of these systematic things need to happen. They're important, but they're not our purpose.
Right. Life is also very important. We're not just a big to-do list.
Even though it feels like that daily, but you know, I think it also comes from like our personalities of being doers and being achievers, and you know, the need to satiate that. But you know, coming back to this place, and you know, the pandemic was, as for me, a really nice piece for us to reflect on that and be like, okay, you know, these are the things that really bring me joy and bring me happiness, and I want to exist from that place of joy and happiness rather than, you know, existing to survive.
Right.
I've never seen anything happen, not just the way this happened, but with the passion behind it. Everybody had a story. Everybody took the time to say, hey, I know this was the idea, but I just had this one thought and I think I could really improve it. And like, that wasn't because of us, that was because, I mean, you know, it was us, but the passion for the plant and the fact that they were like, oh, if this is a cannabis event, we have to do X, Y, Z. So the vendors that we worked with, and I don't want to call them vendors because they're our partners, they exceeded our expectations. And I mean, the gratitude is endless there, and I just, really want to take the time to say that.
And I really want to thank all the artists too. Honestly, like the wow factor here from entering the door to every single room, it was like the wow factor just carried on and on and on, and I was just like, wow.
There was a lot of intentionality, and it's interesting because we had a reporter here last week that caught onto it without us even sharing, and she's like, I think it's very clever how you entice people into the space with sort of these exciting moments and these exciting rooms between arousal and creativity and euphoria, and then you have them captivated at that point, and then you go into sort of more of the emotional spaces like pain and awareness. And that was super validating because when creating this, you don't know if people are going to actually get it, because it's like, okay, we're the mad scientists in the laboratory creating this, and hopefully it resonates with people, but you can't guarantee that. And the fact that she got it, she has no relationship with cannabis. She's a reporter for Fast Company, and she was just kind of standing back after she had gone through the entire exhibit and drew that conclusion very much on her own. And I was like, yes. I was like, okay, good, like we did it. But it was, there's like heavy information and there's light information, and it was this synergy of finding the balance between making the heavy information light, but still like really communicating it in a way, even talking about sexual wellness and cannabis, there's a lot of shame around the conversation around sex, even though most people have sex. And to perpetuate shame culture perpetuates a lot of the violence around sex. And while it can be a very uncomfortable conversation, it's still a conversation that needs to be had. The same way about cannabis, like what you were talking about, having an open dialogue with kids about cannabis, we should be having the same dialogue with kids about sex, because it is a natural thing that we talk about. And showing these ridiculous videos in health class of like how to put a condom on a banana is not sexual empowerment. There's still a ton of shame around it, and talking about it from a place of love and understanding and acceptance is far more progressive than, like you should abstain from having sex until you're in marriage. That, it's just, it's a lot of that happens in these parallel realms. And, even talking about the opioid epidemic and having the conversation of like, hey, the opioid epidemic didn't start on the streets, it started in your doctor's office. And then it's not to demonize doctors that they were doing the wrong thing, but it's just, again, the Stone Age is really about thought-provoking moments. And even just getting people talking about it is already more of the direction of positivity and more of the direction of acceptance than not talking about it at all and remaining in this kind of taboo space of, oh my god, like sex, oh my god, with cannabis, it's no, like.
And on Friday, when I came for the grand opening, that piece of art, I don't want to say what it is because I want people to still come and enjoy everything. I don't want to like reveal everything. But they came and they saw it, and then once they said, welcome to the orgasm, and one person looked at the art and went like this, a female of course, went like this and quickly went to the next one. She was a little shy, but at the end, we couldn't finish our exhibit at the same time. She was just like, all taking it in and taking it all in and everything. Then you kind of notice that she changed her perspectives and like her mindset and everything.
Well, we use the word orgasm very openly, pretty much 3 dozen times a day. It's completely lost its stigma. Thank goodness, because orgasms should be celebrated. And but even talking about sex, about orgasm, talking about mass incarceration. So my work in criminal justice reform, I had no idea about mass incarceration in this country. That's a big problem. It's impacting all of these people. The same thing with the opioid epidemic. Like 1 in 4 people. That means that there's 4 of us right now.
Yeah.
1 of us will be impacted by that. You know what I mean? And it's so it's stuff like that to just bring awareness and light to it, because we can't fault people for not knowing what they don't know. But we can be catalysts in creating that knowledge and giving them a really incredible space to experience that, and then to leave here and feel like they are capable of creating change.
Right, and people always talk about you guys created this immersive event as if it's like a 3D, physically immersive event, but I want to say that it's truly emotionally, mentally, and spiritually immersive event. Thank you. So, thank you guys for creating a beautiful museum and exhibition, and I can't wait wait for all the future cities to come. Thank you.
You're awesome.
Thank you. Thanks, Sasha.
Amazing.
This is a great forum, I have to say, I'm really impressed with your